Alrighty, welcome into episode number 28. This is going to be a bit different than the last streams that we've have going on because I went back to kind of a solo stream. We were getting to topical news and I wasn't having that many guests. And quite honestly, while I'm like thinking about it, let me button my shirt up a little bit. We have a sit down with a cop today. We're going to be hitting some hard-nosed questions. You probably read the title a bit. I also put out a little bit of a description of some of the things we're going to get into as well. So let me just start with this. We'll go through the basic beginning intro. So from last week, the What in the World collab was a success. If anybody missed that, again, me and World collabed on an episode about Alex Jones' InfoWars being shut down. That was this last Saturday. You can find that on World's channel. The second thing is that the super chats should be fine. I'm still working on getting the text to speech to kind of make it a little bit more proliferated. That way, when I'm in the middle of talking, I can hear some random voice start speaking out of nowhere as if it's God. And again, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on X, follow on TikTok, follow on Spotify. Share the show if you enjoy it. And we're just going to get right into it. You can't see him on screen. We're going to protect his identity a bit. We have to do our due diligence to make sure that we don't harm the people we bring on for these purposes. So, why don't we go ahead and get started, man? Who are you, sir? What do you do?
Aaron, how you doing, buddy? Thank you for having me back on. Name's River, police officer here in the state of Ohio. Been freshly just changed careers. Was a EMT for about 5 years. About 3. And then I was in the Marine Corps for about 5. I got asked to leave in a very polite way because I did take the corona vaccine back in 2020. 2021 was my final month in the military, signed my papers, and have never looked back. They've tried to get me to come back in, and I've told them politely, no, I will not.
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, it was really sad to hear that, but I was really proud for you on your part of it. But just to understand, give people an idea of, I guess, where you come from. I mean, right? So you ended up getting smacked down with the COVID vaccine, but you kind of wanted to stay in the industry you were in, which was, being a service member. And I think it's great. It's very respectable. It's honorable, and I'm glad that you're doing it, man. But let's start off with this, right? We'll go right into the general aspects. Has anything changed since the last time we talked? Like the way that you feel, or any vibes? But go ahead, you start.
Nothing's really changed. Still the same guy, still just, out here doing what I need to do. And I try to stay the same person day in and day out, just because not only myself, I deserve it, but everyone around me deserves to get the same person every single day. Obviously, everyone goes through days differently. Some days will be harder than others, but I wake up each day. It's a new day, clean slate, conquer it the same day as I try to each and every day. So nothing's really changed, just a little bit further into the academy, and that's that. Still the same old me.
Sounds good to hear. Glad to hear it, honestly. I guess and we even talked off air, obviously, but through text a little bit about the political nature and just how you were kind of like still hands off on it, which I imagine that's the normal perspective for most people. They don't want to be involved or have to care about things in the political nature. So I imagine you stayed right and true with that same motive.
Yeah,
but,
it's
go ahead.
No, you're good. It's just one of those things that after you spend time in the military, you kind of you learn to kind of not care. And I know that's terrible to hear, but you kind of get into that mindset. Whatever happens. Doesn't really affect you because you're still going to go where they want you to go. So,
hey, fair enough. And I mean, well, I guess, are you feeling more positive or more negative now that you've started the academy and you've gotten a little bit further along? You feel more good in your decision to continue choosing to be an officer?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things that I can, I still get my fix of, I still got a little bit of structure in my life. I'm still able to do what I want to do and not have to answer to someone every single minute of every single day, or having to do A, B, and C when I know it's not going to take my career anywhere in the police world or even in the first responder world. I can go do A, B, and C when I want to, when I'm comfortable with it, and not just based off the needs of the agency, department, or what have you.
Hey, fair enough. I was curious though, now that you were in the academy, and seeing how one of the biggest things that we had talked about previously, and that was a little bit of a point of contention, was the standards. Do you feel like it's a breeze? Like, are you kind of like breezing through most of like the physical standards in the academy?
Oh, absolutely. I actually was a little overweight for my own personal liking, but I for the state of Ohio, you have to run a mile and a half, do a certain amount of sit ups and a certain amount of push ups. And we kind of went over this in the last episode that we did together.
Yeah.
And the more that you work at it, obviously, just like anything you do, the more you work at it, the better you've gotten. I was about 2 minutes over on my run time going into the academy, and now I'm down about 10 pounds, and I'm right on track with being under my run time. I've cut about 2 minutes off, so I'm right at that cusp of passing PT test with flying colors.
Good, man. I'm good. Glad to hear it. Let me also put a little notice out too. Anyone who's in chat, if there's any issues with the sounds or anything, please let me know. Whether he needs to be quiet or needs to be brought up in volume, just let me know, regardless. But let's start right here. I want you to just kind of take initiative on it because I know that you were the one that approached me to come back to start the second episode. Not that I wouldn't have approached you to do a second episode, but
Right.
I felt like you had a direction that you wanted to take it and talk about. So I wanted to open the floor up for you, and you kind of take it from here. Where did you want to go from here?
So in the last episode, it was, and I can't remember the gentleman's name that you were doing it with.
Oh, Donnie.
Donnie, yeah. So you guys had a lot of really good questions about policing and training and all this stuff that everyone sees on social media. And after going through the initial first half of the academy, thinking I'm the type of guy that if someone comes to me with something that I don't know the answer to, I want to figure it out. And I feel like I'm now able to better answer your questions and kind of put a different outlook for you, because I know that was one thing that we kind of talked about offline, was you still kind of have this outlook on police that it's they're a little excessive sometimes. And going through this training, it's like, okay, now I can see why this officer did this, why this officer did that, why they should have done this, or why. And there are times where I'm like, why did you do that? Like, that was actually stupid as to why you did that.
You're seeing
So,
like real life examples. Someone did something, and you were like, "Hold up, what? Why'd you do
oh
this?"
yeah, yeah. Like, so we'll take for example the Acorn Cop. Everyone has seen Acorn
Yeah,
Cop.
yeah, yeah. Viral.
Like, it's absolutely viral. And going through it, I'm like, dude, like, not only are you just like, what the hell are you doing? But after going through some of the things that we've gone through, it's like, okay, why were you actually doing that? Like, what in your mind was going through where you're like, all right, I need to dump a full magazine, roll away,
Yeah,
not verify, like, you didn't verify if he was shot, where the shots were coming from. The call outs were terrible. And then I believe it was a sergeant that he was with. She is just as much his fault. Like, there was so much stuff already that I was like, what are you doing? And then going through the academy, it's like, okay, now actually, what the hell were you actually doing? Like, be better, because this is the type of stuff that's going to kill us.
right,
Like,
right.
it's the type of
And
stuff.
well, I
Go
was
ahead.
gonna say to even cement my argument. There's been quite a bit more similar kind of instances that's happened since then,
Hmm.
in the same kind of light, which is why I was like, I'm very understanding that like regionally things are very different depending on like what region you're in. And so I can't even remember where it was at specifically where the Acorn Cop was at, but I believe it was a bit more of a metro area.
Hmm.
And so I understand like where you possibly might be, in the countryside or a bit more something similar to that. It's probably a lot more easier to keep your department more concise and on point. You have less people to worry about. It's easier to be like, this is the standard. You better stay at it.
Yeah, it depends on who your leadership is, because if you look at any sort of command staff stature or a flow chart, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have one one boss and then 5 people underneath. Like the ideal worldwide stature for command staff is one boss, 5 people underneath. And then underneath them, they're going to have about 5 people, and then they answer to that one person. So it's always 5 people answering to one, and then those people above those people going up and up and up. And it's actually in uh, the National Incident Management System called NIMS, and you get taught that, like, 5 people to one, and then those 5 people above them to one. So
Interesting.
it's on them to really hold the standard, the people that they are above, quote unquote, to be held to that standard, to make sure that, training, they have yearly in-service trainings, they have, maybe even quarterly in-service trainings, or they're like, hey, let's, even if it's just as something as simple as, hey, let's sit down and watch this viral video of this guy doing this. What did do? All right, tell me 5 things that he did wrong. Tell me 5 things that he did right. What could he have done better? What did he do good? So on and so forth. So it's just, even just breaking it down to the smaller stuff of just getting your guys around during pre-shift, be like, all right, this idiot did this. What can we do to prevent this? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it really just breaks it down to being something so simple that even, I feel like even people at McDonald's could do, based on their situations. Like, oh, hey, this customer got the wrong fries. They wanted no salt, or this customer wanted a burger with no ketchup and no mustard, but they ended up getting relish or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
everything has the opportunity to be used as an example to better everybody else.
And I mean, well, I didn't even honestly realize it was that tight knit. Is that what's considered a unit? Like the 5 who answer to one? I know you said NIMS is like the framing, but what is that, like little like a cell? Is there like a term for it?
Um, there's not really a term for it. I guess the term would be command, chain of command. Um, so like, if you look, like, let's take the president for example. Let's take the
Okay.
president, and then you have how many branches of military? 5. Boom, right
Coast
there.
Guard, Navy, military, or Marines, Army, Air Force. Yeah. Well, I guess Space Force makes it 6 now.
Kind of, if you really want to be technical, but it, like, on an average day, you have 5 people answering to the president. You
Yeah.
have 5 people that are like, hey, we should probably do this. We need to think about this, so on and so forth. Under them, then you're going into each of the departments and what they call battalions, commands, units, companies, whatever have you. But
Okay. So from the
generally,
top to bottom, it's all the way like one head,
yeah,
5 answers, one head,
yes,
5 answers. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And that's what we call a chain of command. So that way, there's not like, oh, hey, you need to go answer to this person and this person. Like, you have one person that for sure you have to answer to. So on a smaller level in the Marine Corps, I had, when I was in what we call Gen Pop. So, like, you don't have a billet, you don't have any leader, like, you're not in any type of leadership position. In a squad, you have anywhere between two, 2 and 5 teams in that squad, right? Each of
Okay.
those teams is a team leader. Those 2 to 5 guys answer to the squad leader. Each
Okay.
and in the Marine Corps, we have what you call platoons, and each platoon has anywhere between 2 to 5 squad leaders, and those squad leaders answer to the platoon sergeant. So on and so forth. Platoon sergeants all answer to, it could be company guns, it could be the first sergeant, whatever have you.
Dang. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's pretty in depth, but it's very
hmm
consistent. It sounds like all the
hmm
way from top to bottom.
Oh yeah. So I'll give you my department. We have one chief, 3 captains, uh, uh, 3 captains, 4 lieutenants, I believe, and then sergeants, and then your average patrolman. So each shift has their own sergeant, And then those sergeants each answer to the shift lieutenant, and then the shift lieutenant all answers to the captain, and then all the captains obviously answer to the chief.
Wild, but sick though. I like it. The well, the reason I guess I brought this up, and it's going to be a topic as we get later into it. Um, and so even in that with five answers to one head, there's a bit where it's kind of making me think and we're going to get into it obviously,
Mhm.
but especially in the last couple of, I mean, I would say the last decade alone, if you want to like limit it to that, there's been issues such as, Chicago has issues with like things like black sites, as well as where the NYPD has a lot of instances where they're a brotherhood, right? And it is hard not to understand why they're a brotherhood. I mean, it's obvious, like they're in the field all the time. They're in very, very dangerous situations. And so it's going to be natural, right? Like if you're constantly experiencing trauma or hard times with each other, you're going to grow closer together.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but I think that also begs the fact that, officer testimony against another officer or in support of another officer, I think has to be viewed with a bit of conflict of interest when you do look at it from the framing how you just laid out as well. I think there is a vetted interest in them protecting one another, even if it is over like minor mistakes. Because I mean, let's be real. It's not like they're out here like with twirling their mustaches and like being like, oh, now we're gonna go do this to these people. No, no, no. It's
Right.
like, right, yeah. But say one guy makes a mistake and he knows his other guy didn't mean to make the mistake, but that mistake is still going to end up, someone got injured or let alone, and this happens, it happens all the time. It ends in a lethality or a
Hmm.
fatality.
Hmm.
And then, but the officers themselves might be like, I know he didn't mean to do that. But, they kind of have that vested interest to protect one another. And we'll get into more with that too. But I guess that's where I'm going to be coming from when we go into the use of force case. And
Yeah,
it makes me
absolutely.
think too, um, maybe there should also be maybe a bit of precedent laid out in court when officers do testify for one another in defense of one another. Maybe it gets put in like a slightly different category rather than just like pure witness testimony. But these are also like hard and hard to answer kind of questions when you get into
Oh,
the
yeah.
the big picture kind of aspect of it. But let's go back to where you were starting at, which was
Hmm.
the viral acorn cop, right?
Hmm.
And so you were talking about how people kind of separate, or people kind of get a paradigm of how the police work because they see the worst of the worst on social media. But I would
Right.
imagine you being on the hard side, where you're, or on the inside, I mean, where it's actually hard work and you're putting in work every single day, you're trying to get better in practice. I would imagine that makes you feel a type of way because everyone's just probably views you as like negative, or they view you as like being an idiot. And I would imagine we talked about this. You did get this the last time. How it's awkward, the interactions. But I think do you feel like that's going to play a role in how you operate with everyday people now that you know this kind of like this idea or this viewpoint is out there, this perspective?
I definitely take it into account, but my biggest thing is, and I've taken this outlook on pretty much everything in life is, people can say what they want about my profession or what I do or even me as a person. But the one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to run into me doing something that just I truly just like doing in the out of the kindness of my heart, and maybe it's while I'm in uniform. Maybe it just happens to work out that way. Or maybe we've already had a bad interaction and they just see me out on the street and they see me doing something nice. Like and you know me pretty personally. Like I just like
Yeah.
helping people. So one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to see that and then they're going to have a different perspective because automatically as a human, you can have the worst idea about somebody, the absolute worst idea about somebody.
Yeah.
But the second that someone does something good, automatically you're like, oh, okay, maybe they're not that terrible of a person. And then automatically you revert to, oh wait, no, they're a terrible person
Yeah.
because you want to think that way. And it's just us as human beings, we see someone doing something bad, they're automatically a bad person. So either that's going to happen or something bad is going to happen to them and their first call is 911. Guess who's going to show up? My pretty little face.
Right.
And I'm not going to rub it in their face like, "Oh, I told you so. You're going to need me someday." I'm never going to be like that. never going to be like that because that's just cocky and arrogant.
Hmm.
I'm still going to approach them the same way that I would approach my grandmother, with kindness, respect, and dignity. And I'm going to treat the situation as that. And then they can form their own opinion after that. And if they still want to think that all cops are bad or everyone is a terrible person, then that is truly on them. But I know that I can walk away from that situation knowing that I gave them the best side of me ever.
Yep.
So I do keep that in mind of, these cops, some of these cops out here just being total douchebags, and I don't know the full stories behind them. Maybe they just
Yeah.
caught them on a bad day, or maybe, something bad happened with the family and they brought family to work. It's just one of those things that you don't know everything that everyone is battling, or some people aren't able to separate work and home. But these
Yeah,
guys
because you never know
do.
when it's somebody's last straw.
Right.
You never know.
And it's just one of those things, and I still have yet to meet, like I've met dudes that don't really care about the job, but it completely outweighs, like, the people that love doing the job outweigh the people that don't want to do the job. They're just in it for a paycheck.
Okay, but
1000%.
they do it. But do they? Oh, forgive me for cutting you off. But I was going
No,
to
you're
say,
good.
so they do it because I know you, River, and I would never imagine you to be the type person to look for the evil in people, and I believe everything that you're saying. Do you think though, with what you had just said, the office for the paychecks, not saying they're bad people,
Mhm.
but do you think that there is a differing mindset when it comes to that those ones might be more likely to do something that would violate someone's rights? And I'm not saying to say names or anything, but do you view it as a possibility that like you might at some point have to arrest or confront another one of your members?
It is very likely. And the even the shittier part about it is most cops that get arrested are for one of two things. It's either domestic violence or something with alcohol, and maybe it's both
Yeah.
combined. And it's one of those things that, and you're seeing it a lot more, is, and this might actually be a topic, I think it was, that we're getting into later, is you're starting to see America's going through a change right now. And like everything from top to bottom is going through a change, and this change has been happening for about 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Everyone that's been running, a plant, a business, a department, an agency, what have you, they're getting ready to leave. We're the generation that we've seen the old, we've seen the new, and we're a mesh of both, and we're actually able to call people out because we want better for ourselves. We want better for our family, because we hear all the stories of, my grandpa built this house with his two hands after working 300 hours.
Yeah.
We don't want that for our family. So we see and hear those stories, and then we see the potential that we have with this new training, or this new outlook. We are the mesh point of those two ideologies. And so you're seeing more cops confronting and keeping people accountable, and they're being morally correct. They're like, hey dude, unfortunately I do have to do this. Like, and you obviously let the proper chain of command know. And if it's one of your own, then you let the right people know. If it's someone else but they try to pull the cop card on you, you have to keep everybody accountable. And you're seeing a lot more of that, of like, hey dude, I understand that you're a cop, but you'll also have to understand that I have a job to do. And nine
Yeah.
times out of 10, they'll be like, yeah, go ahead. And, whatever happens, happens. But you will get more respect out of doing your job correct, no matter who it is, rather
Yeah.
than trying to cover it up. And then something even worse happens. And now it's back on you. And then now it's back on your academy instructors. And it's
Right.
just
And
a
that's like a
big
big
hole.
scandal at that point.
Yep. Exactly.
I guess I wasn't even expecting you to even answer it that quickly like that. But I mean, I think you're right because you prefaced it right afterwards by saying things are changing.
Hmm.
And I think it's good that you pointed out the housing market too, because I think if anything, that's what's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Is you do
Hmm.
have a lot of people reaching the age of 28 and 30. Gen Z is kind of growing up into the point where they're reaching adulthood. Um, the millennials are just like, a broken generation across the
Mhm.
board. And, Gen Alpha's growing up. But to see, all of the time on social media, it's like, yeah, this house cost, $70K 3 years ago, and now it's $1.3 million. And people are like, dude, this is
Right.
unsustainable. Like
Mhm.
we can't live like this. And so I think that brings up a couple things, right? I think it brings up one that you're at least well aware of the fact that things could possibly get a lot more violent than they may have ever have been in the last like 30, 40, 50, 60 years, at least domestically, just based on the fact that if the nation does decline economically, that's going to thrust a lot of people into poverty very quickly. And you're going to be one of those guys who are out there on the front lines while you're getting 10 phone calls because people are getting their houses broken into, they're getting this and this and this, this guy shot my dog. And it's obviously going to escalate from a lot more than that. Are you dreading that? Are you finding that to be more of a reality than a possibility?
This is probably one of the toughest questions I've ever had to answer because part of me is absolutely dreading it. Part of me just wishes that we can all just get the hell along. Like, I,
Yeah.
I, I just like that's it. Like, there's really no other rebuttal to that. Is I just wish everyone could get along. Is there still going to be bad people? Absolutely. I won't say bad people. Are there people out there that are still going to make terrible decisions? 1,000%. It's just in our human nature.
Right.
But
Yeah, exactly.
on the flip side of that, I am, and this is just a person that I am, and this is partially the reason why I'm doing the jobs that I've been doing. I enjoy the rush. I enjoy going to work, not knowing,
Yeah.
not knowing
I
what
can
I'm going to get
understand that a
into.
bit. I
Like
can.
it's like if I've worked in a plant, I've been a server, and as much as people say, "Oh, servers, they never know what they're going to run into at work," you kind of do. Like you can pretty
Right.
much guess what you're going to be doing. You're going to work, you're going to get your section, and then you're just going to run tables, and it's the same thing, same spiel. I use the
Oh,
same group of words every single time. Every once in a while, you get that one guest that's trying to give you a hard time or what have you, that's fine. But 9
it's like,
times out
oh,
of
it's the
10.
Krasensteins. Like, dang
Right,
it, I don't want
yeah.
them.
So, it's just one of those things that, like, even in EMS and fire and police, like, I could go a whole week without having to arrest somebody, or I could go a whole week without even turning wheels in on the EMS side of things. And then, but you just wake up and you're like, "Man, I don't know what I'm gonna get into, but I hope it's something fun." And then at the end of the day, you're like, "Man, today was kind of boring." But you're also relieved. You're like, all right, cool. Nothing happened that someone needed me.
That's good though.
So
Yeah.
it's it is one of those things that I have come, and I've talked to a lot about this with one of my coworkers. We're dreading it because by the time that I hit the streets for my field training is about the time that the election's happening. And so, yeah. And so it's one of those things that you just kind of think about and you're like, all right, what is a big event that's going to happen soon? And then you kind of think about it like, oh, okay, maybe this will happen, maybe this will happen, but we have answers to this, we have answers to that, we have answers to this. I don't think anybody has an answer for what might happen in November. And that's the that's the scary part, if you want me to be
I,
honest.
I know. And I honestly I'll just jump right there now since we're going to talk about it here. And not in any depth, or at least not politically, but just at least the atmosphere and the environment. That makes me feel awful for you. So my condolences right now, because like I imagine that's going to be probably the worst period of time you could be doing field training, but you're probably going to get a lot of experience very quickly.
Right.
You know, you'll have plenty to do.
Yeah.
But I even but what's wild to me is you who's someone who's very self-admittedly like I try to not like get too into politics, can still feel the environmental pressures, that like that animosity that's just general, it's everywhere.
Oh
And you
yeah.
can probably just speak to it, just how like you could be in a Walmart parking lot and somebody's like, you're like, hey, how you doing, and they look at you and they're like, I'll kill you, and it's like, whoa dude, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, bro, we're at Walmart. Like what?
Right. Like,
You
who
know, like,
eating your
who's
Wheaties
mad?
this morning, bro? Like, what happened with your day? Like, do you need a hug, bro? Like,
Exactly. And I think part of it too, I mean, there's many factors for this, man. There's so many factors for it. But I think one of the biggest things, and I think that I've tried to hammer this home, you know, a lot in a lot of my previous episodes, is quite frankly, I think there's an issue when it comes to politics at the dinner table. And this is something I've heard Tim Pool bring up recently. He's another very, very, you know, respected commentator on politics, which is for some reason and somehow in some way, politics became like taboo. It's like we don't talk about that here. You know, we don't talk about that around the family. It makes people mad, and in doing so, by I think you know by shoving it under the social fabric of everything, and everyone just choosing not to talk about it, while still holding very, very, very like strong opinions, I think is a huge reason why we've gotten this far in the environment that we have, which I think has lended itself to the fact that people are so violent, is because there really is no discussions happening. And the ones that do happen, people kind of discard because they're like, dude, these politicians are just talking about, you know, the crimes each one has committed. No one's talking policy. You know, we're starving out here, housing prices going up. And so I think all of this is like culminating into a thing where it's like, maybe if we didn't just kind of like choose indifference and like not talking about our differences instead of, you know, ignoring them, we might be in a, you know, a qualitatively better place. But what do you think about that?
my biggest thing is this: is even when you do try to talk about even politics or something as small as, you know, who drives a better car, like it could get so heated, and it like I, and obviously I say driving cars is to kind of ease the tension a little bit, but when you get to politics and someone's like, "Hey, I think Trump is a good president." You say that nowadays, you might as well have just yelled out the N word in the middle of the world. Like, it's crazy to me. And
It
then
is.
I'm not saying that, you know, I'm a Trump supporter, because I'll tell you, I haven't voted in 3 elections. I could care less.
Right.
Don't really care. Like, I have my own speculations, so I'm not even going to try to vote this person in, because everything is just, from my perspective, corrupt. But
Yeah.
anywho, you
I
could
mean, you're part of
say,
a big plurality. A lot of people essentially are in that bracket where I wouldn't even say like they're apathetic. It's just like they're just choosing not to participate anymore because they're just like, what's the point?
right, and the moment that you try to bring up politics to even, and you think it's almost uh oh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost foolish of you to think that you're going to have a civil conversation with somebody random about politics,
Yeah, because
because
they
you
got
don't
nothing
know
to
if,
lose because you're a stranger. And they'll let it rip right on
right.
you.
And it's like, dude, I'm just trying to, like, you could overhear a conversation and just someone ripping into somebody about Trump, or
Yeah.
you could just feel the passion. It's like, okay, cool. And vice versa for Biden. Like, you have some of these Trump supporters that are like, dude, get that old person out of the house. And I'm like, and I will say I am part of that group where, you know, there's been times, and there's a lot of times, that Joe Biden will come out and talk, and I'm like, yeah, that's my president, but dude, like, really? You couldn't have, like, he couldn't have done a little bit better. Like, I know you're seeing some of these memes about you. Like, what
Yeah.
really kills me is when he's trying to read off a teleprompter and he
And he
reads it
says,
word
pause.
dude, like, come on, man. Like, like, what
Well,
are we doing? Like, you wanted to be the president. Good. You got it. Like, good for you. Learn how to read, my guy. Like, or
I
get a
mean,
little TV underneath of you so that you can read. I don't know if like he couldn't read the parentheses or the brackets or what have you, but it's like, dude, come on. Like, you're not making us look good, dog. Like,
well, I think honestly, and that's like the most unpolitical take and argument to have, which is like some people are literally like, dude, his cognitive faculties are gone, dude. Like this guy is going to end
and
up
that's
like
what's
getting
scary.
in a panic attack for no reason, you know? And
Hmm.
I think
And
what's insane is even you'll, and this is why I think you get to the animosity portion, which is like you'll have those people who are like on the far extreme of the left who will be like, there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden. Like he's totally fine. And like, like Harry Sisson is one of them, where he'll be like, oh, we want to get 4 more years. And it's like, do you really think this guy is going to be alive in 4 years? And it's just like, it's not even a political thing. It has nothing to do with what his policies are. It's just
Right.
someone looks at, it's Weekend at Bernie's. Like, dude, we need to help this guy.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like, dude, like, I hope you have EMS on standby. Like, I don't know if this dude's gonna croak just trying to read or trying to shake hands. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. And it, like I said, I read 0% into politics. Maybe every once in a while, I'll read up on Trump just because of the pure don't give a fuck he has. And I just like that in a person. Like, you can not like me, I don't care. I'm still gonna do A, B, and C. And I
Right.
just like reading up on that, and that doesn't sway me to his side or not. Like, that doesn't change my opinion on anything. It's just like, hell yeah, dude. Like, you do you. Like, you rock on. And then
Yeah.
there's other times that Joe Biden, and I'll read up on him. I'm like, all right, dude, good for you. Like, rock on. Keep on doing you. And there's other times where, Trump's toupee flies away in the wind, and it's like, bruh, like, you have the money, get implants.
And
So
dude,
it
I know. And there's so much that goes back and forth. But I have a comment
mhm.
in here. We have Saki saying, what did I miss? Give me a recap. And so, just to be short, we just opened up really shortly, generally, with River coming back onto the show, kind of talked about what we had done in the last episode. But where we're at right now is we're talking about River being well aware of, or forgive me, being well aware of the environment which he is about to go begin his field training in. And so we're talking about the animosity and the just downright negative environment that exists. I guess the better word is being more than negative, just how toxic the environment is to even put forth any amount of opinion. And I had even put in this forward, Sock, which was, I think the lack of vigilance and in fact making politics and religion taboo has led to this kind of environment where, because no one talks about it freely with their closest relatives, they only kind of talk about it on the fringes, and then no one knows how anyone feels, and then it just always leads to this like animosical, like, I just have anger towards everyone because it's a broken system. Does that recap it best, River?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
All right. Well, then to pick back up with what you were saying, man, I and it's in the same light, and we're not, and I don't want to take it to January 6th at all, because there's just so much there with that too. But I imagine you probably have your opinions on that as well. I'm going to do it to a hypothetical, right? Which is, we have news, which is Alex Jones's InfoWars, and this is relation to his Sandy Hook case, which I understand you probably have no idea or understand, like maybe the logistics or the smaller minor details about that case. But essentially, it was a defamatory case in which he lost the case on a summary judgment, which was telling him he owes, I believe it's like $1.2 billion to multiple groups of families over Sandy Hook. And now, after the fact, which essentially, in my opinion, I think that he did go a little bit too far. But I think that this is really a drawn out attempt to kind of eliminate his show, kind of like silence his voice. Because I think what they were asking for in terms of money wise was like the GDP of France. So it was just kind of like some absurd numbers they were kind of throwing around. But to bring it to a head, he's at a point where he's claiming that they are threatening to shut down his studio, which would be the FBI. Now, he got advice from some notable political advisors, which were people like Roger Stone and Steve Bannon. And they told him, they were like, your best bet is to call the local police and have them come out to your place and enforce a local versus federal jurisdiction standoff. Now, I was curious to you if this is even something you've gotten to in the academy, whether they've talked about this, or, who has jurisdiction where, when are you supposed to like stand down to a federal agent, and how you would feel if you were getting called out. Because obviously if you were in this area, people would probably be sending you text messages or something along the sort, being like, hey, like, this is a possibility, dude. Like, I want you to be safe. It could be your wife of all people, your mother or somebody. But I guess given this hypothetical scenario, I guess first and foremost, do you know what like the jurisdiction is for where you're at? Like, what would happen if like the feds came, and how you're supposed to I guess, facilitate those kind of transactions between like state lines, federal lines, and then regional lines?
So, as far as the state and beyond, I have no clue. I have absolutely no idea. But when in the state of Ohio, it's pretty on the police side of things. It's pretty laid out. Um, you obviously have your smaller municipalities, so village of, city of, those cities or those municipalities have jurisdiction in the set corporation limits of their village, city, town, whatever. Then obviously you go to deputies, which have obviously the county, but then and they have anything and everything in within the county lines, and then you have your state police who obviously run everything within the state of Ohio down to the smaller municipalities. And then your ODNR, they obviously have control over your nature reserves, waterways, anything like that. Um,
Okay,
and
interesting.
so, generally, what kind of happens is if, more often than not, most everyone plays very well together. So I know in the department I'm at, there is a stretch of highway that runs through our jurisdiction, but we don't touch it because we leave that to OSP.
Okay.
Now let's say OSP isn't able to handle something, or it's something that's very major, then yeah, we'll take it. But then we'll talk with the guys. We'll be like, hey, do you want to take over on this? We'll give them that option because technically that is their jurisdiction, and then but it is also technically ours. So we'll have that little talk of, hey, do you want this? Do you not want this? It's fine if not. It's fine if so. Beyond
Interesting.
that, I don't know. Like obviously, there's DEA, FBI, CIA, all within
Yeah,
the state.
ATF, like all that. Yeah, all the three-letter agencies.
And then you also have your district courts, how those all interact. I have no clue. But generally, if so, let's say if something were to happen in my department and I was catching some serious flack for it, I'm sure someone would be like, "Hey, we need to figure this out." It's very wild to me that they were like, "Hey, we're gonna just go ahead and have a standoff." Like that's pretty interesting, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
that's
because and this
like
is and this is well, go ahead. Go ahead.
are they talking like we're gonna bring these people to your house type of standoff?
So I believe it is an actual shutdown order, right? Which is the padlocks and all. So the FBI, I believe, and forgive me, I could be wrong on this, but I'm positive the FBI is who is on this case, which is the USPS police force. The I they are threatening to shut him down and padlock the door shut, which I believe on those kinds of orders requires him to exit the building, which is not a use of lethal force, but a use of force action.
Mhm.
Um, and so the advice he's gotten, because a lot of people view this to be in bad faith or downright illegal or unconstitutional. I mean, he's even gotten local guys who have said from the department saying, "We will come up. Just let us know when you think they're going to come." So not only is he getting the advice from literally like other people, um, like in the media sphere and in big name people. But it's his Infowars office is what Sock is saying. So I guess my thought going into this, right? There's a lot of things here too. But I'm even thinking from the perspective of like, how would you feel if you were getting called to a situation like that? Where you're getting called out to where you might have very little idea what's going on. But I would imagine in a situation such as that, you'd be getting briefed like crazy. They'd be like, you need to know this, you need to know this, like this, everything's going on, this and this and this. But if you were situated in a standoff like that, where it's inherently the entire kind of the environment and the context of it is political, I guess my question to you is, would you fall on your principles or would you fall closer to like adhering to the just the pure police action, like just doing your job versus if you caught something off and was like, wait a minute, I don't feel comfortable, whether that's takes the shape in the form of like you downright being like, no, I'll protect you. Or if you're like, hey, I don't feel comfortable on this call, dude, like what's going on? I don't know enough. I guess what's kind of your thought process when you hear a hypothetical like that?
You know, man, that's a tough question. I can sit here and say I would do A, B, and C. Obviously, you put me in
Yeah.
the situation. That's the best way. That's the best way to get the answer. But the best way that I can honestly answer right now, Aaron, is I would follow the oath I took up first,
Yeah. The
and then
Constitution.
the Constitution, the oath of office that I took when I swore in. Like I would fall on that first. My job, like if I'm working and they're like, "Hey, you need to go worry about this." All right, cool. Like that's my job. I have to do it because it's my job. It's direct order. I have to do it.
Yeah.
I can worry about the morals of it later because I signed up for this job. Whether it be whether I like what's going on or not, whether I agree with what's going on, why I'm there, because I guarantee you, outside of the people that just wanted to go and fucking raid people's houses when in Iraq, Afghanistan, all those places, I guarantee you there were some dudes there that did not approve as to what was going on. I
Yeah.
guarantee you, but they still did it because they signed up for it. This is why I'm not saying that this is why, but like I signed up for it, so I kind of have to because I knew going into it, this may happen. There's a million things that could happen when you're out in war or you're just out on the street. You signed up for whatever that blank check is. Someone could write murder the mayor on that blank check. It's now on you to go make sure that they don't cash that in. So
Okay,
it's
I was
just
confused with the analogy you're putting there. I thought you were being like,
no,
all right, well, I'm gonna just go murder the mayor now that they're
no,
telling me. It's like, whoa,
right. No,
dude.
no, no. So
Like,
like
I think
so
we're entirely disagreeing on this.
no, so you've heard the analogy. You're writing a blank check that you're
And you
asking them
can't
to cash.
cash. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yep.
kind of that thing. I guess that was a terrible analogy. It
Well, I
you
guess,
sign up you sign up for what like you when you sign up for a military or police, you sign up for A, B, and C. Now, let's say in this situation, someone doesn't feel comfortable doing it. Are they going to catch ass about it? 1000%. Because the first thing that people are going to say is, "This is what you signed up to do." That person's reaction is going to be, "This isn't what I signed up to do. I signed up to do whatever or to be whatever."
yeah.
Personally, if that was one of my guys and I'm in that leadership position, they come to me, "Hey, I'm not comfortable doing this." All right, cool. We can talk about this later. Now I can put someone in their place that is willing to do it because it is their job. Not saying that what that person doesn't want to do it is a bad person. They're automatically shit back to me. Not at all. I'd much rather you tell me that you don't want to do this, so that way I can fill in someone. So that way that whoever I fill in, they have the right state of mind. They know what to look for, so on and so forth. So it's just one of those things, Aaron. That's like I'd kind of have to be in the situation to
To know.
really fully
Yeah,
give you an answer.
right.
But my answer right now would be, would I do it? Yes. And then I can deal with everything else later.
Okay. Because see, I, we got a couple more comments from Sock. That'll just make me laugh. I think I am on the opposite side of the spectrum with that. And obviously, like I'm speaking, idealistically because I'm not a cop and I'm not in your shoes. So, who am I to say? But I would guess if I were, I'm someone who kind of views even outside of just policing. I view that God transcends politics. So I view my principles as always going to supersede the job. Now, when you go to like the oath and swearing an oath to a constitution, that kind of adds a bit of nuance to like what you've sworn to, and so I will give you that. But the two comments here, which was kind of give you a bit more perspective. I'm putting you in a bad spot too because I'm making you
No, you're
defend
fine. I
this.
just read Sock's comment and it said,
Did
I
you?
mean, Columbus people
Yeah,
is terrible.
I
Oh
know
gosh.
it's hilarious. I think it's right, but It's the one above that too, which is I think that most people who aren't a cop feel the way that Socks kind of commented, which is like, you screwed the job, but he's also saying, it's not my job to lose. So who am I to say, like, go and risk that thing? So that's why I
Right.
wanted to make the example more specific to something that actually already happened.
Hmm.
Say you are given an order to say it's 2021 all over again,
Oh God.
or 2020, make it more accurate. If you were given the order to arrest a woman or man because they chose to keep operating their farm, business, whatever it may be, outside of the mayor's orders, but you know that you swore your oath to the Constitution, and you know that the decree given by the mayor doesn't supersede anything that you have sworn to. And now, you're being given a command from your leading officer, whether it's your squad leader, captain, chief. Kind of walk me through what your thought process would be to that. To say that that the reason you are going to go arrest this woman is because she disobeyed an executive order, by the mayor, that was, you can't have your business open for these 15 days, but the person decided otherwise. I guess walk me through that process, and I guess how you would wrestle with that, whether you would value the chief's commands, or then does it go back then to your oath, of protecting the rights in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and people's freedoms. And I know I'm putting you in a bad spot. It's kind of an awkward one to walk through, but I guess give me your thought process.
That one. I mean, it's a farm. So so you're telling me that this person, you expect me to go up to this person, to their farm that they're operating out of, and you want me to shut it down because someone says that they can't be within 6 feet of someone else? Like,
Right.
it's at that point you're messing with livelihood. And I know of a lot of businesses both shut down and didn't shut down because, one, they were scared of, I'm sure you heard of all the rumors that, there's going to be a midnight squad running around, capping people
Right.
for, or hooking people for, being out past curfew or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's one of those things that I'm like, I'm going to inform you, like, hey, this is what I am told to do. But what I'm not going to do is go arrest someone because they're not following a quote unquote executive order because they're trying to keep their livelihood.
Yeah.
You and I both know that if you shut down a farm, like, it's done and over with. That 15 days, and actually those 15 days given in 2020, those 15 days are detrimental because that's planting season.
Yeah.
That's planning. That's when everyone starts to make their money. So then you want me to go, like, and then I would hit my command staff with this. You want you want someone else to come tell you that you can't come do your job and feed your family?
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
and
I will take
I'm glad that
any
you're giving these
repercussion.
answers.
I will give any type of I will take any type of repercussion for that because I know 80% of the people in first responding, they worry about their family first. They're in first responding because there is good retirement. There is good money in it.
Yeah.
You can
Great
set up
benefits.
so many good things, like, their future is so bright. I want you to go tell someone in first responding, "Hey, you can't go to work today because someone else told you not to." 9 times out of 10 you're going to be like, "No, sorry, I'm still going to go to work."
Yeah.
And then they're going to go do and then they're going to figure out a way around it to be like, "Oh yeah, I was at work, but I made sure I was in the parameters of the rules that were set. I never came within 6 feet of someone. I always had my mask on me. I
Yeah.
always put on hand sanitizer every 30 minutes. Like, I had all these things that I needed to do so I could still provide for my family because no one was getting any stimulus checks. No one was making money."
Yeah.
And then at that point, to really solidify it, what were they called? Not an at-will employee, but
Oh, the essential workers, what you're saying?
yes, yeah, that's an essential job.
Yeah.
That's an essential job.
Well, and that even
Nine
opens
things
another
that
can of worms too, because then you have to be like, okay, well now does this mean that essential workers, just by proxy of what job they chose, means that they get to work and everyone else just has to like deal with it? But that's an aside. We'll go back to what you were saying originally.
no that's a good segue, Aaron. Like it's unfortunately it's all jobs are essential. It's just a matter of what degree of essentiality you are. We need everyone to do everything to make this country run.
Right.
That's just how it is. It's just
Yep.
a matter of what degree. So I wouldn't say that because everyone is essential. Like I said, everyone, even at the time, was essential. And at the time, I was selling cars. I was selling cars, and our business still stayed open. And I'm kind of thinking, but we're not really essential. Like I want to know what my boss said to the mayor or the governor. That's like, hey, my business still needs to stay open because my workers are essential. Maybe it was just as simple as, hey, they still need to feed their families. They're working on commission. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But
I mean, maybe
everyone
with
is
the car dealership, it's probably just because it's like, who else are you going to facilitate, a car transaction, I guess? And maybe by proxy of that, only really you can only go through a dealership outside of private purchases. Maybe that was the argument.
I truly have no idea because I can go on Facebook Marketplace right now, find a cheap Honda Civic for $500.
Right. Exactly. Well, and I guess the other point I was going to say too was like you brought up the 15 days. I mean, almost everywhere it was way longer than 15 days. Like
Oh, absolutely.
that was
Yeah.
just a big lie, if anything.
Oh yeah. That was, and I'm not even going to get into that because oh my goodness, that was wild. And there was just, oh my goodness. Anywho, so a lot, what I did see a lot of happening was a lot of career changes happening in that 15 days, which is why it lasted so long because I feel like a lot of people left their jobs and now they're wanting to go somewhere else. So businesses weren't able to reopen after
Yeah.
that 15 days because they didn't have the personnel.
Well, and it's not even the personnel too. I mean, a lot of people change jobs, and we talked about serving a little bit before too. We both were in the serving industry. If you remember, the 6 foot rule essentially for most businesses, those restaurants, it halved their capacity, like their dining capacity, because they were
Yep.
forcing every other booth to be, you had to put up a sign up in the booth and say, sorry, 6 feet distance. And so you
Mhm.
essentially lose half of your ability to have, tables.
Right.
And so I know, for example, before I was working at, before I was doing this was, well, we need half as many servers now. All right, you
Right.
guys pick who's going home. And it's like, but everybody's like, we all need money. And it's like, all right, pick who's going home. And it's like that. And you're just kind of forced into a bad position. And
Mhm.
it's not like the business owner can change anything because if she says she opens up all of these tables, well then what happens when you do get a cop who comes in who's supposed to enforce these things? And then you get into a really bad situation, and then the business owner is trying to do things to not only protect their business, but they're trying to do things to make sure they don't have to just send people or gut people. And I think a
Right.
lot of these places, they after they hit the 2 or 3 month mark, they were like, "Is this forever? Like, is it going to last a year? Like, how long until we can like
Right.
return to normal?" And then I think that added a lot of the animosity too that we see that's coming today.
And that was, I started serving shortly after that again. And after thinking about it, I was like, why not just get on a rotation? There's 7 days in a week. And obviously not everyone needs to work every day because some people, may have class or, they may be going on a trip or whatever have you. Some of these things were able to be prevented after they were able to open their doors again. You can go on an every other day. You can close one day and then keep it a split even in the middle, working every other day with the front of house.
Yeah,
There were ways that everyone could have still been like, all right, cool. You're getting these days. You're gonna get, you're still gonna get some form of income during this terrible time. Because I, even selling cars, that was like there was a couple times I went back and turned wrenches just so I can get some extra dollar signs on my paycheck. Like it was like
interesting.
everyone. Oh yeah, it was a tough time. So, but I don't know, man. The COVID was a wild time, and I know for me, and I can't speak on police officers during that time. I can't speak on firefighters during that time.
Right? Yeah, you were
But
you were pretty distant from that during that period.
if I were them, and this is 1000% Monday night quarterbacking because I didn't know what kind of policies and procedures they had, what kind of rules that they're like, hey, no bullshit, you have to enforce this.
Yeah,
But if I walk in and I see someone standing at 6 feet, I'm not really going to care because I have better things to worry about rather than someone making sure they're 6 feet away with their mask up.
I love that answer. And
Like,
and and I think too, like I think it's not even an issue, in the local areas, from where we're at. So I think, we're kind of a bit distant from like a super metro urban area. So it's like
oh
we're
yeah,
probably dealing with a lot less extreme of the extreme
mhm,
ends of this issue. Um, but it's still good to hear like you take that stance and be like, okay, no, like I'm not going to the T go and like stomp my boots to these people just because like, the mayor said so. And I think that's what
right.
most people are looking for, that, right? Like that's what they would prefer policing would be, to have a bit of what's the word? A bit of leeway, right? Like
A little
using
bit of
your
a
best
heart.
judgment. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, or a heart or a soul. and,
like it.
and not enforcing edict unnecessarily.
And that was one thing. So right near the end of COVID, um, was when I got into uh, EMS, and obviously they were pushing masks hard. So like everywhere we go, we had to wear a mask. I had to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Once I got on truck, I'm like, I looked at my partner. I'm like, do you really care if I wear a mask? And he's like, no. I was like, all right, cool. Like I don't.
I won't
And
tell, you
so
won't tell.
right, like we'll wear our masks where we need to. Like we'll keep it on low key. But like if we're together, I don't really care. Like it's to me the COVID was just a really strong flu. That's what I truly think it was.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, in a video game, because we know YouTube still has their opinions on what happened in 2020. So
mhm.
we'll leave it. We'll leave it at that. I wanted to go to this comment here, which was, I was walking dogs during COVID, and businesses was booming during COVID because all his clients were doctors and they had to work. It sounds like this guy made out with a
Hey,
fantastic business opportunity.
and that's another thing. Like a lot of people started doing I can't remember the name of the app, but they started walking dogs, they started doing DoorDash, they started doing Uber Eats, they started doing all these things that
Yeah.
now people almost need, like a domino effect. They now need to be on their phone. They now need to be on their phone to order food. They now don't have to do face to face interaction. And it's just this really big snowball downhill thing that kind of happened
Yeah.
that really worries me as to what direction this country is going in, because now you're not having face to face interactions, and I actually saw a meme before we got on here today that said it said, sorry restaurant, I'm not scanning your QR code for the menu. I'm with the old folks on this one.
That's
I'm
funny.
like, I'm with you on that. Like, can we
Yeah,
just go back to simpler times? Like literally before COVID,
I know.
everything
So
was
much
where it needed
changed.
to be. Oh man,
And well, I
wild.
think too, you're talking about people having to, who what went from like using gig economy to essentially like, what's the word, help make ends meet while they were like, getting half shifts, then became a necessity because inflation shot through the roof because of all the stimulus checks, everything being shut down, money printer go burr, like, and so now we're dealing with the consequences of this. And also, I have another chatter in here. Kukla, what is up? Hey, good evening. I appreciate that. She said, late tune in, 7 p.m. Eastern here. Yes, it is also 7 p.m. Eastern here. Um, I guess, and we're getting past the hour mark too, because I did want to get into the Elliott Leavitt case. But I guess when I hit you with one of these, one more hard one too, before we get much further.
Are you good?
And it's going to be what I have actually on screen right here. Is this the one I wanted to do?
Is
Yeah.
this the
Which
right one?
is, yeah, with crowd
Okay.
control.
Yeah.
And so, and I'll play this video again while it's on screen. I'll turn the sound off. I can turn it up a little bit.
I watched this earlier. This is wild.
Well, I guess my point with this is we're seeing this everywhere now,
Hmm.
right? Like I guess more so in urban areas too. But, and I'll pause it right there for a second. And the reason I bring this up too is because you might not be as familiar with this, but Bellefontaine, Ohio, and this is where I used to work, so I'm not doxing myself. I used to be in Bell Fountain, Ohio. There was a rising incident, even in the local area, which was, for some reason, there was a push for Drag Queen Story Hour in Bell Fountain, Ohio, of all places.
Yeah.
Now, this led to an issue of groups signing a bunch of petitions. I guess there are some scandals involved. But I think to me it was an eye opener because it just showed how far the roots had actually settled. Like it's everywhere now, right? So even in out here in butt crap camel Egypt, right? In the middle of Ohio, you have this same stuff happening that you see on a day-to-day basis in social media. And so
For
and
the
the reason
listeners, if you
go
drive
ahead, go
north
ahead.
of Bell Fountain, there is a legitimate farm that has camels and like other exotic animals that you can see from the roadway, just to put it into perspective.
It's it's like a fever dream once you start getting out towards South Mountain, Ohio. I don't know where I am anymore. But
Did I drive
still,
so far east that there's camels all of a sudden and grass?
yeah, like I don't feel safe anymore.
Right.
No, but I guess I say that because there was a clash when I was working on Main Street with protesters. There was a group that was protesting saying that drag queens should be allowed, love is love, and it comes from the same kind of not pure leftist, but just the pride crowd. And obviously in about Fountain, Ohio, you can imagine the majority, it's very, very Protestant Christian Baptist at that,
Right.
very old school, and clearly they opposed it. But what I wasn't expecting was it going almost immediately to there being protests. And so there you have a small group trying to get petitions signed out, in Bell Fountain, Ohio, and they're getting swarmed on both sides with people parking their cars, blaring their horns. I believe at different points, people came up with like water bottles and were trying to spray them down. So it never really got to the point of violence, but it definitely was crossing the threshold of like, this is definitely harassment. Like these people are harassing these other people. And so now there's probably going to be, it need to be some kind of like adjudication, right? Like you can't just spray some random person in the face with a water bottle. I mean, do you need to get arrested for it? No, but we should separate it. And so, and to the point which, I mean, I'm even speaking a bit more out of order here too, because it's been a while since I covered this and it was a while ago. There was also like a bit of like a cover up with even on the mayor's end of like, telling the police like stand down, like just don't get involved, like let them do their thing. And so it brings me here to where I'm going to play this again. I'll turn the sound off so we can watch this going on. I can expect that these scenarios, as we had just said, as we get closer to the election, being a much more of a reality, even in small towns. Now, I guess my question to you is, what do you even think about this? Like if you were thrust into a situation like this, where there's like 8 people fighting each other, I mean, do you go straight to the tear gas? Are you just like, all right, dude, it's over? Like, or I guess, give me your thought process again of like what you would do for this. And again, if you knew that there were 2 factions and say you understand one faction is they're fighting for, maps, right? We'll go even for hard left, right? There's one group that's protesting is for minor attracted persons and the other group is Christians. It's like, I guess, do you insert any kind of principle there, or are you more so going to be like, you fall back on the job and you're like, if the person broke the law, they broke the law. I'm not going to care about what's going on. And I guess give me your thought process.
So what we're actually taught, and this is the major reason why I actually came to you on this, we're taught to use our words first. Like it is ingrained in us and brought up on every single almost aspect of any form of policing that we're doing is to use words. So if you're going straight to pepper gas, then you got something else going on. Personally, I'm gonna try to separate you and
something else going on.
like I'm gonna try to talk to you first, and then like I'm gonna talk and separate, because one, we don't need anyone going to jail. There's no need for anyone to go to jail when, granted, yes, are you impeding on the normal operations of the city because you're standing in the street? 1000%. Keep it on the sidewalk. It's that simple. Like
Fair enough.
like it's that simple. Just keep it on the sidewalk. Like people are trying to, and then I'm going to speak a little sense into the people that are on the streets. Like these people are trying to go to work. I get that you're trying to make a point. I get that 1000%. You have every right to do so, but let these people get to work. Let these people go back home. Let these people do what they're trying to do to live their life. Absolutely make your voice known. That's fine. Go right ahead, please. But don't do it in a way that impedes on people's lives or it may even legitimately impede on someone's life when you have these protesters standing in the middle of the street. 911 call goes out, and that is the only way that this truck or the cruiser can get through, and all these people are in the way, not listening to the lights and sirens that is just absolutely going haywire behind them, and they're not
Yeah.
moving. Like I said, I'm never going to down anyone for being gay or straight or lesbian or what have you. Like, love who you love, make sure you're happy, and I'm happy. Do not care. Like, but
Yeah.
do it
So
in a way that,
you're probably like a default kind of libertarian, right? Like it's
well,
probably like
absolutely,
where you kind of sit at.
yeah.
I'm a recovering
But
libertarian.
like I don't really know. Shit. Oh, uh, like I honestly don't even know what I would deem myself. Like really the differences between Republican, Democratic, Libertarian. Like I really don't. And I'm not even going to plead stupidity. It's just I choose not to.
Yeah.
Let the gays own guns and smoke weed. Like
So you okay? So you're not even a Mises Caucus libertarian. You're a Chase Oliver libertarian, which I think even
like
he's a little bit way too out of bounds, honestly, with this progressive stuff. But hold on, I want to do two quick comments. I'll go right back to what you were
yeah,
saying.
you're good.
From Sock is saying, why am I just hearing about the Ohio camels? Well, Sock, you should come to Ohio. And then secondly, he says, my wife's gay friend is from Bell Fountain, so I just assumed everyone from there was gay. I will say my point on that is there is for some reason a pocket of gay lifestyle in Bell Fountain, Ohio. It's been developing for a while. It's a small town. I think it has less than like
Uh,
I think
Less than
30,000.
20,000.
Yeah, 20,000. And it has gay bars in it. So if that may gives you a
Yeah,
better idea of where Bell Fountain's
I
at.
do.
They're
Yep.
what would you call that? They're like a hippie town. They're like one of those man, I'm trying to think of the actual like name.
I wouldn't
Hipster.
call.
They're moving
Yeah,
to a
there you go.
hipster
I was about
town.
to say, yeah,
Yeah.
they're definitely a hipster town. Yeah, for sure.
They're trying to
Hipster would
take
be
all
the
like the
best way.
old things and be like and we're gonna make it cool, guys, and like and that's what
Right.
they're doing all that kind of element stuff to it as well. But the tangent we were on, which was which I think I agree with you. I think that when it comes to the policing nature of it, I'm glad that you respect people's ability to peaceably assembly and protest, even if I think that they're idiots and wrong. Mm, it made me think of the Just Stop Oil protest. And I'm sure you've seen these as well, which are the ones
I
that I find to be the most egregious of any of the protests. I mean, these are people are fighting, so I bet half of them aren't even thinking that they're like into the streets. But with the Just Stop Oil, you have people that are like cementing their hands into the road. You have people who are like, hot gluing themselves to like, to a sign or something. And in those instances, it's like, can you even like consider that a peaceably assembled group when they're clearly like preventing the highways from being functional? I find that to be one where, especially where Florida and there's another state too. Forgive me, I can't think of it off the top of my head. Has now legislated if you are surrounded by a mob, it's similar to what you see here in this imagery, which has been happening where mobs surround cars. You are allowed to drive through. It's the
that's
castle doctrine extended to the car essentially,
that's
which is if
stupid.
you feel your life is endangered, you're surrounded by a mob, and this is in Florida specifically. It's somewhere else too. I cannot remember where it is essentially like just go right. It's like you
So
do not owe these people to stop and sit there and wait for them to break into your windshield, similar to like what we're going to get into this case a little bit later on. But go ahead.
now that fear of life is so it's great, but it's very specific. Um, i.e., going to the Elliott versus Leavitt case.
Yeah.
It's super gray. Like what I could, my sister could be sitting there holding a beer can, and I could think that that is, oh shit. I could think that that's life threatening to me. But what the court, what's really, and
The
that's
courts would probably
giving
say that's unreasonable, though.
right, and like that's such a touchy subject because you want these people to drive through these, like, no, that's not okay. And to any reasonable person, that's not okay to just be like, oh yeah, just go ahead and just fucking plow through them.
Right,
No,
but yeah, not the Just Stop Oil protesters. The specific instance, though, that gives the condition is the mob is surrounding your car. So not like if you're you turn on the street and a bunch of people are fighting, you're allowed to drive through them. It's
right.
specifically in the instance that like they're mobbing your vehicle. And they're like beating on the hood, they're jumping on your windshield. That I think is the condition set in Florida that
Okay.
allows that. Not in just like oh, they're in the streets, drive through them, dude.
Okay, that
Like
makes
not
sense.
because that's a bit extreme. And I
That
guess I should
makes
have
sense.
prefaced it a bit more that
Yeah,
it's like the mob.
I
And
was
well, the
like,
reason being is you might know the not Daniel Penny, not the New York case, but Daniel Perry, who was a man in Texas who
mhm.
was an Uber driver, and I believe he was also a former service member. He was driving to do a delivery with an Uber. He ended up getting caught out by one of these, these I think there was like a George Floyd protest at the time. And he was approached by a man with an AK-47 while he was driving in the middle of the street at like 10:30 p.m. might have been 11 p.m. because it was late at night when he was doing this. And when you're surrounded by a mob, a guy comes up to your driver's windshield. I believe it was the driver windshield. It might have been the passenger windshield. It's been a minute since I looked at this. And he brandishes the weapon in a form that's like, I don't know if it was specifically that he aimed it at him, but it was at least brandished in the way that he held it up.
Mhm.
Then I believe Daniel Perry fired out of his car because he couldn't move his vehicle. He had nowhere to go. And so he just like, he freaked out. That, I believe, was the precedent that then led Florida to institute the law in which if you are in a car and you are surrounded by a mob, you are not to wait until the point of your life is being threatened. You are allowed to leave the mob. You are given, I guess, the leeway to get your car out of the
Mhm.
mob. Now, there's probably a bit more conditional statements of that, right? Where it's
Right.
like if they can see, like you clearly just tried running people over. It's like, okay, like this law is not going to apply to you. But within reason, and if you stretch that to another person, would this other person reasonably do the same, make the same decision? I think then you do have an argument here, which is, well, if someone's getting mobbed, is it better that they just drive through the crowd or they shoot out of their car? And then again, we're getting into gray area. But I guess what is your thoughts on that?
Someone can mob my car, that's fine. But the second, and personally, I'm going to wait until someone does something of the such where my life is in immediate danger. Then I'm going to act on that. I That's the only thing that I'll act on is my life is in immediate danger. Someone can mob my car, that's fine. What are they going to do?
Well, here,
I can fix a windshield. I can fix things on my car, but the moment that someone brandishes something that is an immediate threat to my life, I'm going home. 45 rounds are about $36 per box.
so okay, I did. I feel the same. But here's where I'm going to take this. Say you have your 7-month-old daughter in the vehicle.
Mhm.
A swift kick from someone's boot could kill this precious life of yours.
Oh yeah,
So at that point, then it changes what the parameters are of immediate danger, right?
because
Because
now
someone's fist could
I
now,
have something now that is more worth to me and is my future. So then yes, I'm going to do anything in my power to make sure that my little girl goes home.
right?
I
Oh,
have
thank
a
you for
very
Sock.
strong
Sock said he had the gun in a low ready position. So I think he was holding it like across his waistline. So I think it like passingly crossed across Daniel Perry, but that's a side point. Keep going, Never. Hate to cut you
so
off.
well to go to let Sock kind of think about this. A low ready, did he seem like he was just holding it down at an angle, or was it low ready, barrel forward, low ready? Because there are two different. that that's two different total things. So I'll let you think on that, Sock. But if my daughter's in the car, I'm going to make sure that my daughter gets home.
Yeah.
No offense, buts about it. I have
And
gotten to the
so,
point in my life that I don't care. I could care less if I go home because it. And hold on, let me rephrase that. If I'm with other people, because I know someone will try to
yeah,
twist the words there, and
yeah, right,
988 is the high. There's a hotline for that.
right,
But if
exactly.
I'm with my friends, or if I'm with my family, or if I'm with my little girl, I will make sure that they go home. That's just my thought process. I've done a lot of stuff at the age of 28 that if I go in that manner, then I'm okay with it. If everyone else around me gets to go home, especially my daughter, I've lived a pretty good life.
Um, hold on, I will go right back to what you're saying. Sock said barrel forward, I believe, and I think that's also true because I can distinctly remember a picture of it being barrel forward. But I guess
That's
my
a
secondary point though is like I challenge you even on that, which is what quality of life were you giving your daughter if you know if you're dead? You know what I mean? Like it's when you're supposed to be your father and you're not in her life. I would argue that the best choice would be to get both of you home. I
Oh,
guess in your own
absolutely.
personal interests. But I guess in my point of view, I think that the immediate the immediate threat of danger is the part that causes a lot of these issues. Which and what I mean by that is exactly this little kind of this parsing we're doing between these minor details, which is the low ready and the barrel forward. Now, you who has the military training and the police training, you can right away you can tell the difference of that. But the 84-year-old grandmother, when it comes to her, you can't possibly expect to apply the same criteria as you would a 26-year-old cop. So I guess when it comes to that, because an 84-year-old grandmother can get hit with a rock that's the size of a penny and it would kill her.
Right.
So I guess when I'm looking at these things, and I believe you should also have the right to defend your loved ones too. Now, I know a lot of states don't extend it outside of oneself. And in fact, there's been plenty of instances where the shooter has gone to jail because it wasn't his life that was in immediate danger. It was the person he was protecting. And I find those cases to be honestly like stains on what is justice. In fact, it's just a downright injustice to me. That's why I challenge the immediate danger portion of it because I think that that's where it makes and breaks a lot of these cases. And that's why I'm saying, because with a mob, say even no one has a gun. Well, what's to stop someone from punching the window? They don't know my daughter's in the car. And when they punch through the window, they send glass shards into my daughter. And now she's choking on them. One cuts her in the neck. And then now I'm on a timetable to go save her life to go to the hospital. I guess my point with that is the same way that you would argue for Elliott and Leavitt, which is, do they like, are they required to wait until the moment the bullet is flying out of the gun to make a choice to defend themselves? And I would say no. I think it's actually a few steps back, which is these people are clearly putting me in a position, and now which my life is in danger, all bets are off now. And I think that would
Mhm.
be like with the mob situation. And I also agree with what happened in the Elliott and Levy case. And I think we should go to that too, because we're getting a little bit farther into this. I'm going to let you explain it because I think we should start from the top of like the Elliott versus Levitt case. And I know that you understand it a bit more forwards and backwards than I do. So why don't you go ahead and hit me with the kind of the overall synopsis of what happened with the Elliott Levitt case?
So Elliott Leavitt is a case study out of Maryland where it's a use of force case where an officer observed a vehicle driving erratically, pulled the vehicle over. Come to find out that the driver was intoxicated. Um, for some reason, the officer didn't fully search the suspect uh, and handcuffed him. I believe it was backwards, but then he worked himself forward. I can't remember how they handcuffed him, but handcuffed him and then put him in the front seat of the cruiser, which is also
Yeah.
a wild point. Um, and so then, as the give me 1 second here and let me take this right quick. I
Are
get
you
a phone
fun?
call.
Oh, you're fine, brother. Well, while we're waiting on River to return, I did look up a few things about this Leavitt case. I It's a wild case. I gotta be honest, and it was my first time hearing it in its like, go look up this specific case. And so when I was reading the case text on it and a lot of the study that comes with this stuff, um, crazy. And now I'm gonna let him explain it because I want to let him explain it from his perspective. But it is one of the very, very highly known in case law because it is a presidential case when it comes to the use of lethal force. Now, when I read it through the case, I saw a few holes I think I could poke into it right away based on the the way they ruled on the case after the fact. But again, I would like to hear what River was going to say about that. So I'll put it back on the React scene. We'll wait for River to come back in. Hate to give you what's that called? Dead air. But I'd imagine this phone call is pretty important, so we'll let River go ahead and take it. I guess while I'm doing this, I can look up to see if it was the barrel forward with Daniel Perry. I trust you, Sock. I'll just put it on screen. Oh, so he did get pardoned. That's amazing. He was released from prison an hour after he got pardoned. Hey, that's a win right here, dude. Daniel Perry got out, man. Let's go. Um, explain it to me. Travis County DA tried to overturn the Daniel Perry pardon. Well, I guess we're on break right now. I've never really had to do a break period on live. Anybody have any comments for me? Anybody have any questions they want to ask River? I'll save those towards the end after we do that. We cover the Elliott versus Leavitt case. Let me type this out too for any of you guys who are interested about what we're talking about.
All right.
Oh, you back?
Sorry about that, Aaron. Sorry to give you some dead air. Yep, I'm
No,
back.
you are fine. He
All
said
right.
Q&A time.
So,
well, hold on one second. Anybody in chat, like I said, you have any questions for River? We'll save those at the end. I'll try to stop at like 5 to 10 minutes before we end this, and I'll rip out your questions for him. But go ahead, River.
perfect. So where did I leave off? Elliott versus. They get him handcuffed and get him in the cruiser, and then as the two officers are talking right outside of the cruiser, uh, they look down and they see the suspect has now brandished a weapon. They obviously back up, draw theirs. They order him to drop it, and the suspect did not, and then they fired upon him and ultimately uh, subduing or not subduing, but killing the suspect. Um, they the aftermath of it, the mom was not too happy about it, obviously, because police killed her son. The facts of it, I think there's a total of 17 shots fired out of both pistols. Both officers didn't expel all their rounds. Um, a lot of controversy kind of came behind this. The mom tried to say that the gun was planted, um, that they used an excessive amount of force. But what the reason why I bring up this case is because it's super good. A couple things that the officers did wrong. They didn't obviously fully search the suspect. Now, when you're taking someone into custody or you're actually arresting them, it's your duty to make sure that they are fully checked as much as you can. The
Yeah.
fact that, and it'll say that the officer did not check the front side of the suspect, um, that's textbook. Like, and that's one thing that we are taught: search everywhere.
Yeah.
We actually just got done doing that, making sure you check everywhere in the most appropriate manner, male or female, making sure every inch of the body that can be checked right now is checked.
Well, that was be the first thing I would like. I was gonna say, I'm honestly, while we do this, while you kind of tell the story, I'll kind of give you like my holes that I kind of thought through as I like went through this.
Mhm.
Now, I I do agree with the final ruling, essentially of like how the case was supposed to be. I
Mhm.
just think there's like a lot of holes in what kind of set it up. But we'll start with what you just said, which was the searching failure. Um, because obviously, like the correct process would have been they searched him thoroughly enough to the point in which they would have found the firearm before they would have even, put him into the vehicle.
Right.
The big thing that sticks out to me is Elliott is extremely skinny. He was a very, very small person.
Mhm.
Now, could it be possibly that he was wearing these huge baggy clothes? I didn't see that when I saw any of the images, but again, there's no body cam footage too either, so it's hard to see
Right.
what exactly they were wearing when I was looking at the case text.
Mhm.
So it could go in one of two ways, right? Like maybe he was wearing super big baggy clothing, and like that's why they just like they didn't see it, right? Because the clothes are just so big and it's obfuscating everything. But then I also
Right.
thought if he's super skinny, wouldn't you, with form telling clothes like that, wouldn't you be able to see like the shape of a gun very easily on somebody who's wearing who's that small? Especially, given the fact that like I can clearly tell when someone's carrying front or 3 o'clock and simple things like that. He might have been
Right.
carrying it, inside of the pants and things like that. That was one of the first things I thought, which was like, okay, they messed up procedure multiple times. Or not even, I guess, mess up
Mhm.
procedure, but I guess they just did it poorly. And then the mess up portion of it would be like, why would they seat him in the passenger seat? Is there precedent to put someone in the passenger seat instead of the back?
There's absolutely none. Um, and obviously this is back in '96, so I can't. I was barely a thought in 1996.
Yeah, right.
Um, so I don't know how police were doing things back then, but I even even just today, that's to me that is obviously such a risk to officer safety to putting someone in the back seat or in the front seat. So I don't know why you would even do that in the first place. Like you just arrested them. You're not going to be holding a conversation with them really on the way to the jail or wherever you take people to in your
Yeah.
jurisdiction. So that I that's just pure not thinking on your feet on that one. As to why he didn't check front side, I don't know. I don't know if he was just being like if he was complacent that day, if he just, thought, oh, he doesn't have anything backside, we're good front side. Like, and I guess that all comes back down to complacency. I feel like it was complacency, and I even told my instructors this. Complacency kills, and
Yeah.
these guys are lucky that they were able to use their sixth sense and look down and see a barrel pointed at them, and they still kind of went through the use of force of, all right, we have an immediate threat, put down the weapon, put down the weapon, put down the weapon. They still doesn't put down the weapon. Now you have to uh, stop the threat. We're not shooting to kill. First off, first and
Right.
foremost, not shooting to kill. We're shooting to immobilize or to reduce the threat.
And are you trained center mass, right? Is that like the typical, just the default?
Yeah, yeah, center mass.
Yeah.
Um, and but then you also have shooting drills that aren't center mass, but that are still able to disable you. So you have two to the groin, one in the chest, or um, the one in the military, and this is strictly military, two in the chest, one in the head. Like you just,
Interesting.
yeah. So it's speaking on that, even that has changed. I don't know what it's changed to, but I have a buddy that went back into the Marine Corps, and he said table one and table two, which is our shooting ranges, those have changed completely. And so I'm actually very curious to see what the shooting iterations are for that. But at least when I was
Interesting.
in, it was two to the chest, one in the head for the military.
Well, what would you think would be a reason they would change that to? Was there a problem with the two to the chest, one to the head?
I have no idea. I have no answer for you. I have no idea as to why they would change it because they've been using that since I, personally, I'm just going to say 1775 when the Marine Corps was born, but obviously it's a little extensive. But they've been for the 5 years that I was in plus, they've been using. the 2 in the chest, 1 in the head method, or 2 in the groin, 1 in the head. They've been using these shot iterations for years, which takes it back to everything is changing. Like, I don't want to. I don't want to shoot any. I don't want to shoot anybody in the first place. I don't want to. I could go my next 25 years in police and never shoot one person. But I
Right.
also know that they have a life. They have a family. I don't want to shoot anybody in the head. I don't. If I have to, if I'll absolutely shoot you in the chest because that hurts. That hurts a lot. Now
Yeah.
you're laying in the hospital.
Yeah.
You're
I think the
rethinking.
least of what it does.
Right. Like, you're laying in the hospital, you got a hole in your chest. Now you're kind of rethinking your actions. Like, okay, that probably wasn't the smartest of things, but now you're able to face the judge. Now you're able, the family of whatever you may have done is now able to feel justice because you're going through the court system, you're getting your sentence, you're getting whatever it is coming to you, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's
I feel
with
like
this
most people who
one,
get shot in the chest don't make it to court, though. At least that's the kind of feeling I get. Like, I
it's
obviously gives them a better chance than if you go into the dome.
right,
But
and
I guess that's the point, right? You're trying to give them the best
the
chance to
best
not
chance
die, right?
while also uh,
Neutralizing.
give me 1 second. I have a buddy that's listening to this podcast.
Oh, really? Okay. Tell them to chat in. Tell them to not be shy.
So, well, he's not very much
Politico.
of a, yeah. So he was telling
Fair
me,
enough.
missing the shot under real world stress. I know higher level military, we are told to shoot the target down, which makes sense.
Interesting. So it's shoot until they're on the ground.
Correct. But those guys over there, they don't care.
Right.
They
It's
just do
it's
not
military
care.
excursions. Yeah.
That is dudes that are just they are there to kill you.
Right.
That
We're
is
in
their one
wartime.
sole job. Right.
Yeah. Entire different set of rules for that.
People back home, you're trying to neutralize the threat. You're just trying to be like, all right, cool. I'm now safe. My buddies are now safe. Boom. So on and so
Yeah.
forth. So
In the military, it's way more understandable too, because it's like, it's much easier to
you
paint
expect it.
lines between like an enemy nation and a foreign nation and, you're obviously your home nation versus, oh, what's up, Quan? It's talking on your buddy, pal. Versus the domestic situations where it's like it's not wartime. But I say that, macro
Loosely.
picture. Right,
Mhm.
yeah, loosely, because clearly when it gets to these certain points or you get even into the arena of like no knock raids, like that is reaching wartime, right? Because the parameters have been set, the
Oh
warrant's
yeah.
been issued, you're a bit further along in the process. So it's not to say that's an absolute. But I guess to go back to the Elliott case, because I want to keep it here, because I want to
Yeah.
actually really go through this.
Yeah.
The second portion of it though was that his gun was unloaded. And I'm not using that as any way of arguing, because it's like no
Right.
one can ever tell what the issue is when the gun's unloaded.
Mhm.
So, but I think though, with the preponderance of evidence though, if he is drunk and he has which I guess you can put it both ways, right? Which is like, if he's drunk, he might not even think that it's unloaded. He think it could be fully loaded and he's doing something. But I think the bigger thing would be he was handcuffed and placed in the front seat of the vehicle, which is a bit tighter than the back seat. I know I hate to say this. I've been in these things before. It makes me think there's a possibility that he was trying to just get it out of his pants because he was uncomfortable. And so without body cam footage, the case hinges on the fact that the officer's testimony is entirely honest and correct, and that he did point the gun at them. Now, I think that's a big, big marker, because this is essentially precedent being set on he said, she said.
Mhm.
Now, I know there's evidence that backs up that he was holding the gun, but that evidence can't determine if he was aiming the gun. Now, I can expect if you get put into a vehicle and you're not carrying correctly, which he wouldn't have been because they didn't see the gun on him, so it had to have been loose in his pants, which would have probably been the front.
Mhm.
So you can imagine it might have been pinching some parts he didn't enjoy being pinched. Now, him being drunk, also on top of this, heavily intoxicated, he probably didn't even think about what that perception was if he was going to be pulling that out. Now, I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying like this is devil's advocate here. This is giving him the complete benefit of the doubt. Now, I don't think this Elliott person was a good person, seeing how the fact of his history was just before this, Elliott was involved in a case where he was threatening another motorist with a gun.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think that because of these factors, it led this to have the context of he is a delinquent. So he must be treated almost to a lesser tier even than like a citizen. Now I know you probably don't think like that when it comes to these situations, but it's again, we can't, it's hard to speak for everybody. But I think when you're looking at setting the precedent, when there's all of this happening here, I think it does need to be stated that a lot of the testimony did hinge on the fact that it was the officers corroborating each other, backing up that they had both seen him point a gun. Now, I'm saying this because in the beginning portion of this, I had said because of the black sites in Chicago, we have all these instances of where, cops are telling each other to turn off their body cams because they want to protect each other. And the way that the command system and framing is set up, there's clear incentives for them to want to protect each other. And I'm not saying it again because it's not like they're twirling their mustache and they're evil people, but say that, Leavitt is the one who fires, but I think it was Brown. Brown was the second officer who was there.
Yep.
But Brown could be like, oh, dude, no. But he knew that it was a mistake. But then he makes the choice then to take the officer's side who made a mistake over the perceived delinquent who just caused the community problems. And that's where I think you can put it in the most realistic lenses possible. I find it to be, and I can't say, right? Because it's like I wasn't there. There's no body cam footage. But I think when you have so much of the case hinging on just the testimony like that, I think there's room for a lot of like, did that really happen? Or do we just trust the officers? And now that's in for the individual case because the precedent that it set mainly was the fact of the officer should be allowed to exercise use of lethal force before a bullet's flying at them was essentially the way they phrased this. But I'll let you respond to all that because I said a lot.
No, you're good. So we'll start in the beginning with I'm assuming you carry, and I'm assuming you appendix carry.
Mm-hmm.
When
Yes, sir.
you take your holster out or when you take your pistol out, your first thought is, okay, where is everyone around me? If there's anyone around me, where are they at? So that way I don't flag them.
Right.
That's so ingrained into you that you could do it completely intoxicated and you're still going to be like, all right, where's the nearest person? So that way you don't accidentally go boom.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Even
the first
before I'll
rule of
pull it
the road.
out, I'll like look
Right,
around and be like, that way I'm not like, terrifying anybody or something like
right.
that.
So then we go to the point of, okay, he's drunk. All right, it's pinching some places that he doesn't want it pinched. Okay, he pulls it out. Even if you're inebriated, you're still going to pull it out in a form that shows the officers that it's not a threat. So you are if he's handcuffed front, or even if he brings his hands across front and he pulls it out, you can pull it out in a form that's not pointing at the officers to show them, all right, I am not a threat. Please take this from me because I forgot,
Yeah.
or you guys forgot.
Well, the
Pointing,
first thing I'll say to that though would be say he's not a licensed concealed carrier, right?
mhm,
And now that honestly might, depending on the state, because I think it was in Maryland, that might automatically make him a felon just based on the fact that he was carrying without a concealed permit. But it's a lot of different things have changed since then based on constitutional carry. But again, that's an aside point. But I guess are you saying then? Because I guess my thought process is like say like you want your grandma to carry, right? If she's going to go out at the end of night or something, and it's like that's her right. I don't expect her to with the same kind of suave nature like make sure that she's doing all the right things. It might be a bit more awkward compared to a man who has better like hand-eye coordination who's more familiar. say she has her CCW, but say she only carries like once every 6 months because she goes to, she goes to the edge of town or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I think it opens it up where it's like, you add the fact that he might not be experienced and he was intoxicated. That might lend it to, he might have pulled it out in a, what's the word? Like in a clumsy way, which could have led to the fact that the officer sees him clumsily pulling it out, rushing him to a decision to be like, oh, he's going to shoot us. And I can see that as a real possibility.
So if
I don't blame the officer either.
If you read the report, the officers were talking and they looked down and saw the barrel pointed at them.
Yes, but this goes back to my first point, which is the only thing that backs that up is both the officers. So it's just both of their testimonies, which is why I wish there was body cam footage as well to kind of like, because then if there was footage, you could even at least tell there was a delay between the reactions. Like one of them maybe saw it first and the other one, because to me, I find it, especially if you go back to the 90s, right? Would that not have been an easier time to have maybe like fudged something or been like, hey dude, like we gotta lie. Because this is bad. And I can see a situation like that happening.
Oh, absolutely. 1000%. I'm not downing that one bit, especially like you said, especially in the 90s. To me, it's just one of those things that I think the officer was complacent, didn't check front side. I don't see, no matter how drunk you are, no matter how sober you are, if you could clumsily pull a pistol out of your waistband and then point it at a police officer and not realize, being handcuffed in a cruiser, I don't know how you not realize, oh, I probably shouldn't do this in
and
any
that's
way.
Part of it too is he's handcuffed, which makes me think like how would he have been able to point it, because I think he was handcuffed in the back. How would he have pointed a gun at an officer out the passenger window, because he would have a bit of height to clear to get it there. I'm just thinking like out loud, like when I'm trying to visualize what may have happened.
No, I'm with you. So I can't remember. Actually, I might have the thing pulled up. But
well, while you're doing that, I can read a couple of comments here. Well, I guess it's just the one from Sock. He's asking, why did he have the gun in the first place? And did they even have carry laws back then? You might know a bit more than me.
So this is down in Maryland. So I know 0% about their carry laws. And again, why he has a gun. Why wouldn't you have a gun?
Yeah, and just because the fact was like this previous incident was him aiming that same gun at a motorist, he must have had some kind of license if he didn't get it taken from him. If he had it again at the second instance. So he must have at least had some kind of license, I would imagine. Because otherwise, I would imagine the courts would have taken it from him.
So what I have noted here, Officer Leavitt then noted movement and saw Elliott holding a gun pointed at both the officers with his finger on the trigger. Officer Leavitt then claimed gun, and both officers drew down on Elliott. Elliott did not drop the weapon and was then shot and killed. Neither officer discharged all their bullets. 22 were fired, and 10 were found left in the officers' weapons.
Which shows that like they didn't mag dump on the guy out of like pure panic. So there was some kind of reasonable nature to it.
And this kind of solidifies the complacency of it. It was actually Cheney who was the backup officer.
Cheney,
Officer Leavitt then briefly searched Elliott and does not remember if he searched the front side of Elliott. They then placed him in the front seat passenger of the cruiser and then fastened the seatbelt. So I don't have written down here how they handcuffed him, but if you handcuff someone palm to palm, you can, if you're skinny enough and you are limber enough, you can work your hands front side.
Which I think is evidence in your favor of the police evidence being true and being honest, which is he was a very tiny person. That was one of the big things of note, which he was very, very, very skinny, which also led to the fact that I think it was his mom putting this out there, which is why he was so easily intoxicated, because he was like a very small figure.
Well, that doesn't. I mean, you and I both know that some of the skinniest dudes that we know can
Yeah,
pound
right.
out 30 beers and be walking and driving just fine.
Right. But he was definitely skinny enough where I could imagine he could have probably wiggled himself out, especially being someone who's been arrested multiple times. He
Right.
probably was a bit familiar with it.
And so after, and this is another one of those things that it gets down to the small details of, we just got done learning how to handcuff somebody. It makes sense. If you handcuff someone palm to palm, they can do exactly this. Let's say that Elliott was handcuffed in the back or to the back, palm to palm. You can
Okay.
wiggle yourself out front side. If you handcuff someone knuckle to knuckle and you try to wiggle yourself front side, one,
Pop your shoulder out.
pop your shoulder out. Two, if you do it, cool. Still try to use your hands because the way handcuffs are designed, they go with the shape of your wrist, which is the shape of an egg. It's oblong. So
Yeah,
you're not going
yeah.
to be able to, if they're tight enough and they're appropriately put on, you're not going to just rotate your wrist around in those handcuffs to be able to use your hands how you want to.
Yeah, without breaking or tearing a ligament, essentially, to make that
Exactly.
happen.
Yeah, like it's so given this, I truly do not see how, let's say he was handcuffed to the rear, pulled his hands through, you are making that choice, that conscious decision to point a gun at somebody. It takes a it's not a it's a voluntary thought. It's not involuntary. Like that you use voluntary muscles to do that. There's nothing in me that believes this was, oh, he pulled it out in a manner that now he is pointing it at the officers. Like there's it just doesn't make sense to me how, and I see how, I see your thinking. It just, reading the report, or not the report, but reading the case study, I just don't know how. And I'm also thinking of myself drawing my pistol out of my appendix and making that full 180-degree turn to point the pistol at a wall. Because I
Well,
actually did think about this. I sat
yeah,
down, I pulled my pistol out of my out of my holster, and I'm just sitting here. I'm like, okay, I have a pistol in my hand. There is 90 degrees to where I have to turn and physically point it at somebody. And so then I was like, okay, I could grasp the whole pistol with my hand and show you, hey, I have a gun, or hey, this I have this thing. All right, now I'm ordered to put it down. Okay, I'll put it down. Dude, the
yeah.
I get that he was extremely
Like,
intoxicated. I get that, but there's just some mannerisms as a human that your muscles are being told to do that. They're not just automatically doing that.
well, I guess this is where I see it and where I can see that it could possibly be involuntary, which is everything we just laid out, which is if it's say it's not in the holster, right? Because I definitely wouldn't have been if he's carrying it in the way that he was, so they missed it, right? Because if it would have been in the holster, that's one of the first places they go check, right? Pat, pat, pat,
Mhm.
pat. And so if it wasn't there, it had to have been in an awkward spot. Then if you do add in the fact, say he does he even wrestles himself forward, his hands forward, well then he's still drunk and with limited movement, probably trying to get his gun out. I can see a situation where maybe he possibly like his grip gets loosened on it and he has to catch it again real quick, and like that gives him a flash of like he's aiming the gun out, because we can be real, like especially if he's drunk, there's a good chance while he's trying to pull it out of his pants it slips and he drops it. So we, with kind of like what's it called, with reflexes, quick reflexes, people would be like, oh, and then they grab something real quick. But then when you do that, it would give the officers who out of their peripheral vision, right, like they see something moving really quickly and now he's like gripping his gun, but really it could have been the fact that he might have let it fall out and he's thinking like, I don't want to shoot myself in the leg dropping this thing in here, so he's like he grips it super hard, thus giving the impression that he is aiming it out the window, but it could have just been a bad situation. I agree with you. Like if he wasn't intoxicated, I still think that there's a chance that someone who's like not as experienced with a firearm could be in a situation where if they're wiggling it out of their pants while they're cuffed, could possibly aim the barrel at a location that's obviously not prime, you know? And I can see that happening where And it would
Maybe
still,
it
though, fall back on the officers where they think the gun's being pointed at them. I don't think they owe it to this guy if they do think a gun's being pointed at him. You know, like if they truly do believe the gun's being pointed at them, I mean, like, dude, like all bets are off, dude. Like it's self defense at that point. So I
right.
agree with the fact that the officers should be allowed to protect themselves. But I think the argument's a bit more complex than that, which is why I put it here at the very bottom, which is I think the argument shouldn't be are officers allowed to exercise use of lethal force in the face of danger? It should be if officers make repeated mistakes that make a situation much more dangerous than it should have been in the first place, are they allowed to exercise lethal force in the situation they created? I think that is a more accurate synopsis of what happened in this instance.
Right. So that's actually a really good point, Aaron, because some officers do create um, situations that they are now forcing themselves to use lethal force. Some of them do know how to game the game enough to do that.
Right.
Unfortunately, severely unfortunately. Um, but the downside of that matter is they still have to use deadly force or lethal force.
Right.
Granted,
Because the end result's still the same. It's still like they got into a spot where a gun's being aimed at them.
right.
I just is like, I think
Which
if you
brings me
can
to my point
notably,
of
well, go ahead, go ahead.
which which brings me to my point of we are ingrained, and I can't, if I had $1 for every time someone said to me, "Use your words in the academy. Your words are your best
You'd
weapon."
be a millionaire.
Oh my goodness, I'd be a millionaire because that they stress that so much. Like that is because think about it. If I walk up to you and I point a pistol at you and I'm like, "Hey, we're gonna do this, this, and this. Give me your license, registration, proof of insurance." You are automatically like, "Whoa, dude! Like, no, like I don't even know." Like, you're automatically defensive.
Right, exactly. Just by
If
the
I just
manner
walk,
of how you approached it.
now, if I just walk up to you like, "Hey, man, I'm Officer so and so with whatever division," you know, and you talk to them like a human being, and you just and you keep them informed, like, "Hey, this is what you did. This is kind of what I was seeing. I just need to do my job," so on and so forth. You're going to get so much of a better reaction, and they ingrain that in this, and that's one thing I can actually attest to because this is one thing that I was so excited to talk to you about. They teach us to use everything in our power before we even think about pulling that pistol. They teach
Which is
us
good. I'm glad. I'm glad because
every
it feels like that's probably a different environment than probably where it would have been 5 to 10 years ago.
and even 5 to 10 years ago, I have talked to some of my old buddies. They still like they weren't as heavy on it, but they still were like, "Hey, use everything before your gun. Like your gun is your last defense. You have your mouth, you have your hands, you have your taser, you have your spray, you have your body. Like you can use so much of
Baton,
everything
even.
else."
Yeah.
Yes, like yeah, like there is so much other stuff that you can use before you point a barrel at somebody. And that is the biggest thing that one I was excited to learn. Like I don't I know I'm going to pull my pistol out on somebody at work. I know eventually it's going to happen.
Right.
It's going to be a very unfortunate thing because that'll be the first time that I've actually had to do that.
Right.
Fortunately,
And you're probably just praying that you're ready for it.
yes, and but I want to be able to be like, yes, I used everything in my power before I had to go to the thing on my hip. I used my hands. I used my words. I
That way
used
your
some
conscience is as clear as humanly possible.
right. Like I know a lot of the guys that I am in training with, and a lot of guys that I'm going to be working with, they are thinking the same way. I want my conscience to be clear, so that way if something were to happen and I actually do have to put 12 pounds of pressure on this trigger, I know that I did it fully well aware, and I can go to sleep at night saying, "Hey, you used everything that you could before it got to this point, and they still continued on. Now I have to do this." And that is one thing that I want to stress to anybody that is listening, anyone that is going to listen. we aren't just taught go beat the hell out of somebody and then shoot them in the back of the head. Like, we're not taught that at all whatsoever.
Right.
Our instructors are some of the top tier people. They want, and these are some of the dudes that are like, they are some badass dudes. Like, these guys are like, I'm only scared of my dad and God, but these dudes I wouldn't even want to try to. I
Facts.
don't even want to try to even go against in training. But they are just the most soft spoken, well versed people that I know. And these are the guys that are teaching us, hey, use your words. They're just
Yeah.
so soft spoken. They're like, use your words, use
And I'm
this, use
glad.
that, use your
And
taser, use something else. And it's so nice that I'm able to tell you that and tell everyone else, like, this is what we're being taught. It's the guys, it's two people that make us use things after that. It's the people that keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing
yeah.
that we eventually do have to get to that point. And it's the people that just see it on a video, like, oh, that was the first thing he went to. It's the first thing he went to. He just pulled his
Yeah.
gun out.
Yeah.
I want people to be like, okay, maybe he did, and actually do some research. Okay, maybe he did use, a technique, or maybe he did try to do this, or maybe he did try. And in some of these videos, you
Yeah.
can actually like vision or audibly hear him trying to talk to him as a person. And these guys are just saying, F you, F that, you're a effing pig, this, that, and the third, talking all
I know.
disrespectful. I'm like, dude, I'm approaching you with respect. Just because I have a badge on my chest doesn't mean I'm much different than you. This is just my job, and I chose to do this. Underneath
No,
this,
and I
and
think that's what people don't understand is just like how complex these things are, or just like that that they're being fed like an out of context clip. That's not to say that there aren't like really egregious examples of officers like doing something way out of line, but I think that there's nuance to be had in almost all of these cases, especially because like when you do think about it from a human perspective, it's like, for me, it kind of approach things from like we're all born evil. The Christian origin, people are born with original sin, and we kind of got to live in an ever losing attempt to not be that way. I still view that there are men who don't wish to have guilty consciences, who are in the work of policing, who do end up still in like really poor situations, and it's like, what could have anybody really done? And so, like, I think that there needs to be an allowed nuance there too, because as much as I might rag on policing and in policing in general, as like the framing of it, I do respect like the individual officers to a point. I mean, as long as I know them and what the region's at, and I do value the policing. I just my bigger qualms are like at large when it comes to like things like this case law as well, and like precedent and things, and like the overall framing. But it's great to hear you say like, well, we're all being taught the correct way. So like I hope that gives reassurance to everybody else who's listening. Like if this instance does happen, just know it's like, well, we didn't teach him to do the bad thing, right? And so it's
right.
like you at least have the understanding that like the other officers were trained to be like, okay, what this guy did was wrong. And I think
And
that's
it
a good thing, and it moves things into a better direction than at least where we're at currently.
and it goes back to, like I said earlier, Aaron, where America is in a time change. Like, the past 5 to 7 years, we've been in this gradual change of, you know, and this kind of goes to a point that you sent me in the notes, where you have all these older officers that, are kind of out of shape, or they're still in office, or they're still, doing things. It's the old way meeting the new way, colliding and going into this transition of new world policing. Like, we
Yep.
have guys that are actually out there active, doing active policing. They're not just sitting around, or they're listening to what they're being taught in the academy. They're actually going out and applying it. And I've met so many officers that, I'll tell them about my academy, and they're like, oh yeah, this, here's a situation where I use that, or here's a situation where I use, this technique, or this
Yep.
is how I tackle this. And I'm like, dude, this, and you've been doing policing for like what, 10, 15 years, and you're telling me like you actually use it. And it's just one of those reaffirming things, like, okay, what I'm being taught is true, is the right way, because these are guys that I know and trust, that if for some reason I were to go out and I were be beside them at a call, I know that they're going to try to do the right things the right way. And if I
Yeah.
do something that's messed up or that's wrong, both morally and against training and against policies and procedures, they're
Yeah.
going to hold me accountable. Is it going to suck? 1000% that we have to throw up one of our boys, be like, hey, you did this wrong. You got to go talk to chief like that. And
Yeah.
that's
But
where
you
we're
know,
headed
like
towards
you're in
this.
the good place, right? Like it's like you have
Mhm.
that reassurance that it's like, well, at least even if I do make a mistake, like these guys are gonna eat me alive, you know.
Right.
So it gives you
Absolutely.
a better feeling about what you're doing with like the overall mission.
And that just makes you do things right because you don't want to let your boys down. Because if the minute that you start doing things the wrong way, that affects everybody else. The minute that you start doing things
Yep,
the wrong way, everyone else now has to watch out for you because now you might do something more messed up, or you might do something else wrong, and then
exactly.
now your
Gives the
department's in
department a
a
bad name. It makes recruiting
mhm,
harder. It extends to a
yep,
lot of different things, especially coming
1000%.
out of the COVID stuff. Like recruiting was
Mm.
really bad for policing to the
Oh yeah.
point, and well, this is even like, I don't want to go too deep into this because we're past the 2 hour mark, but to like with the drones, right? Like a lot of these police departments are now bringing in drone departments essentially to make up for the fact that like they don't even have enough warm bodies to kind of complete out their police force. Kind of like letting drones do like the surveillance and doing other things that like they can't really be out to be. I think one of the easier examples is like they use them for traffic and stuff. Like a
Mhm.
drone will just be flying over some random spot over the highway checking speeds, and that makes it a bit easier, right? Because then like there's you can have a cop go to a situation rather than be stuck on some highway, free state or interstate. Um, but I guess since we are past 2 hour mark, one thing I was going to say is I hate that we didn't get into any of the female cop or the obesity in the old cops too, because all the liabilities that come with that. I think we should leave it
Mhm.
here. We can
Yeah.
pick this back up and do a part 3 in a couple of weeks, month, whenever you feel free to come back. Um, I think there was something I was gonna say and I just can't remember it. But there is a comment here which I thought was hilarious. That was a top tier comment. I don't know if you saw it. He said the officer's probably freaked out. Did anybody check to see if an acorn fell on the cart? And so I think that's just top tier, right? It's
Oh
funny.
yeah,
It's inhuman.
that joke
And
that joke runs around like wildfire. Like, someone will drop a pen and be like, "Acorn."
that's hilarious because it probably is like a huge inside joke to a lot of these departments. That's
Oh,
awesome.
absolutely.
I'll turn the floor back to you, man. Is there anything else you want to say? While we got you.
No, man, it's always a fun time coming on your podcast. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all the listeners coming in and seeing what I have to say. Hopefully, this gives a broader light, and that I don't come on here to try to become famous because I know Aaron one day is gonna be on the top charts for podcasts, but
Be
I
nice.
don't do this to I don't do this to try to get into the limelight or to try to bring fame to myself. You can ask anybody, and including Aaron himself. I don't do things for an award or for the fame. I want people to be just as knowledgeable as myself, especially when it comes to something controversial that they may not know. So, not everyone's going to know what we do in the police academy. I will happily come out and tell you after I do something, hey, this is how we do things. This is how things are supposed to be done. Here's X, Y, and Z. And then here, just like with the Elliott versus Leavitt, here is something
Yeah.
prior to prove, all right, cool. This is how far we've come from A back in the 90s now to B in the 2020s, and
Yeah.
how everything has now progressed. And, like I said, how we use words and how we do active policing and guys
It's the
actually
evolution of
wanting.
law. You know how they
Right, like,
adjudicate
it's
things. Yeah.
exactly. So it's just one of those things that, I hope I can keep teaching guys and or keep teaching people and keep showing people, like, there are good police officers out there. There are always good police officers out there. It's the ones that don't care, or it's the ones that don't really want to do the job. They just want it because they consider they're a police officer or whatever
Yeah.
reason have you.
They
It's the
want the
ones that
status,
actually
not the
care.
principle.
Exactly. It's the ones that actually care about the job, that want people and the general public to be like, yes, you can trust us. You can look at us the same way that you just look at someone else that's an average human being. The only difference between us is every day I pick up a gun and I wear a badge. And
Right.
that just shows where I work and what I do for a living. I'm the same guy behind the badge as I am in front of it. and that's with most officers.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad that you came on, especially to bring this back out. It for me it's almost like I get to I need to equalize myself out. Like I see like 18 different instances of cops that bother me, and it's like, all right, I gotta go talk to River again, dude. So I calm down. like there are good police out here, dude. Like let me walk back
dude,
these stances.
You will always, I mean, you got my number now, so you can always call me up, and if you want to pick my brain, absolutely. I'm always happy to let someone. I will give someone as much information as possible, because I feel the same way. Give me as much information as possible, so that way I can make my own decision that is rational, informative, and I know I'm comfortable with it, not just making it off of, oh, I saw one thing, now this is my whole livelihood.
Right. No, and I'm glad. If in a perfect world, every cop would have the principles of you, especially because like we grew up together, dude. So I have a better understanding of who you are than obviously like who the listeners. So I just hopefully we can keep moving in a positive direction. But again, thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, not a problem, brother.
We gotta do this again sometime soon. This comment here from Kukla. She said there is also, Aaron, that disappointing parade march of the FBI wearing their insignias on their t-shirts, proudly marching along. I don't know if it was in California for Pride. I know this is one of the things we didn't get into, which was like police defending people who are exposing themselves in public. I think that there's a lot of room for discussion there. Maybe that's where we go at next time, River, because we didn't get to that portion. I did have something in there with Pride, but we didn't get to it because I wanted to cover the Elliott versus Leavitt case, because that caught my attention a bit more once you sent it to me. Plus, I knew it was something you knew very well, so that's probably a better topic. But no, I did not see that, Kukla, but I'm also not surprised. And then it's a sock is saying again, do you have a streaming schedule or do you just go live whenever? Right now, I'm just going live whenever. A large portion of that, I try to do anywhere between 6 and 8, so it's going to be in that same same kind of schedule. I also try to always post on X too when I know or I'm going to have a chance to go live. The issue with me right now is I'm working a bunch, and now that my wife is pregnant with my daughter, I'm kind of like on X Games mode. So I'm trying to essentially put out as much content as I can while also working as much as I possibly can too. So I'm trying to just make everything work. I'll try to get better at that, Saga. That's actually probably a good point. But again, it's probably always going to be in the evening because I work in the morning. So expect anywhere from 6 to 8 p.m. I try my best to also post everything when I go live, like on X and Facebook too. Maybe I can start posting it actually on the YouTube community page to do that. But just so you have a better answer, I try. We were on that 6 p.m. Monday schedule with Donnie, but now that I'm doing more content throughout the week, I just find it easier to go live when I have like my stuff and my materials prepared. But I guess we'll go ahead and end it there. I just want to say, God bless, Christ is King. Let's hope this country recovers. Let's pray for River. I hope that you're not in a situation that extends any ounce of this dangerous context to you in the future, man. I hope you have a safe and long life, and especially, protecting the people of the region you're in. I know that you're doing them a great service there. But again, this is offensively accurate. Hopefully this was a little bit more offensive than accurate, but I feel today we were probably more accurate than offensive, so I hate that for me. But again, appreciate you, River. And thanks again, everybody. I will say this, there's probably going to be one more stream I do this week. I'm going to try my hardest. We'll probably go back to topical news. Donnie might even be involved. There's also a possible debate I might schedule with one of the people who recently joined my Discord. A lot going on. I'll try to keep you updated as possible. So follow me on X if you want to see all the live updates. It's where I kind of post the more menial information about what's going on. But we'll end it there. Everybody have a good rest of your night. I appreciate it very much. And take care, guys. Peace out.